from the plot of the original animated series.
But, well, I knew that there was this whole thing about a cloning thing with Princess.
Right.
Right? But I didn't think that they talked about like horrible experiments where like their bodies were sprouting like electronics and stuff.
Okay, well, it's Japanese. It's from the 70s. Yeah, it's all about cyborgs and stuff. And of course, Burger-Katza, who we know as Zoltar, is actually a hermaphrodite who switches back and forth from male to female forms. But yes, the kids had to be orphans in the comics because they were actually installing cybernetic systems in them, and it could have killed them. And the implication is that a lot of people actually did die, but these 5 kids survived, and they're the only ones who.
That was touched on in the comic books. Yeah. Yeah. It says
and of course,
the TV show we watched was changed because of graphic violence, profanity because of what's his name, Kiop.
Jinpei, yeah,
and
it was
nudity. Who was running around nude in that show?
Burg-Katza for one, June the Swan Princess for another. Joe the Condor, the Black Condor, what's his name? Jason dies in the original Gatchaman series.
Well, I knew he did because he was always like an outsider one to me.
Right. He actually dies during the show. And I want to say that at one point he's either a former member or a spy for the evil Spectra Galactor people. And he ends up dying to try and save them. It's interesting.
I got the years ago. I'm recording now, by the way. Years ago. Yeah. Years ago, I got the Japanese unedited versions of Gatchaman, right? They had that DVD release.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it going, wow, this is really not that good.
The music is not nearly as good as what we got in America.
I think that's what ruined it for me. And so I only think I watched like 1 or 2 episodes, and I just was like, I'm moving on to something else. Oh, here's Nadia, Secret of Blue Water, or here is I don't know, some other Cowboy Bebop. I'll watch these instead.
Right. And the fascinating thing is, if you ever watched Mystery Science Theater, you remember the jokes about Sandy Frank?
Yes.
Sandy Frank Productions and the Gamera movies.
Right.
That's the production company, the producer that brought Gatchaman to America.
Is good to eat.
Sandy Frank, movies really, really suck. Hey, but he brought Battle of the Planets to America and apparently sprung for just incredible music to really make it sing. And then, of course, they had to cut out lots of violence and sex and drugs and rock and roll.
I guess I want to go back and see. I mean, I don't remember in the first 2 episodes any profanity coming out of Kiop, but I do remember there being some crazy violent stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess I need to dive deeper into to see some of this other stuff that they're talking about that was so controversial. And of course,
keep in mind, it was 1972 controversial, and it's 2018.
Oh, so they're like in their underwear walking around.
I don't know. I honestly don't remember. I've seen all of Battle of the Planets, the American series.
Right.
I've seen a little bit of an American dubbed version of Gatchaman, where they had characters trying to do the voices of Casey Kasem and Ronnie Schell and Janet Waldo, which was really bad.
Yeah.
But I have not sat down and actually just watched Gatchaman because it's 114 episodes.
Right. And the DVD collection that I have, I can't remember if it's DVD or Blu-ray. It would definitely have been Blu-ray. So maybe it is the Blu-ray collection. I have it in the other room. It's the entire series.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, Battle of the Planets is like 88 episodes. And that's still a lot.
So that means that they edited all that stuff down to cut out all that stuff out. So it went from 112 episodes down to 88 episodes just by cutting out the naughty bits.
Well, they also cut several entire episodes dealing with Joe and/or Jason being a possible traitor and dying. So, I mean, they chunked out a lot of stuff, not just the nudie parts.
And then they had to insert the horrible Seven's Arc 7.
Well, because once you cut out all the violence and death, the story didn't make sense anymore. So they used, seriously, Zark was a bridging effect. He would explain what was going on, or like the weird moments where you'd see
the leader of Red
Squadron.
I know how awful he was. Oh, this looks like a terrible time for our heroes. Here's my antennas. Wiggy, 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 wiggy.
Here's my little robot dog.
Here's Zoltar's sister.
The thing about Zark was not that he was bad. It's just that he was so blatant. I mean, first of all, he's basically an R2-D2 recolor.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just so intent on destroying the drama because something bad will happen. It'll be like big drama moment. And they'll be like, oh, everything will be fine, you know. I'm like, screw you, Mr. Ed. He's not actually Mr. Ed. He owned Mr. Ed. The voice actor.
The voice
Alan
actor.
Young.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Alan Young, man.
Yeah, he just recently passed away.
Remember when they thought that all cartoons were for kids, and in reality, I mean, in Japan they were so much more advanced than we were when it came to animation as an art.
I guess, yeah. And the thing about Gatchaman that I will always have affection for is Gatchaman inspired Super Sentai, which in turn inspired Power Rangers. So without Gatchaman, not only would I have not had anything to talk to the kids in 4th grade about, I would not have later had Super Sentai and much later had Power Rangers, because Super Sentai actually came out or sprung out of a well of, hey, did you see that sort of thing? You know,
yeah, there's actually we didn't have. Well, I mean, we had Battle of the Planets, but I mean, we didn't have like the true Gatchaman, and we didn't have the stuff that turned into.
We had Dynaman in the 80s. I watched Dynaman. You ever watch Night Flight when you were a kid on the USA Network?
No, I didn't have cable. So if there was any of that weird stuff that was on like WGN or stuff, I never got to see any of that. So that may be why when people are like, "Oh yeah, we watched what's the Ultraman? Ultraman was on all the time." I was like, what freaking channels were you people watching? Because I didn't have Ultraman. I had He-Man. I had She-Ra, Princess of Power. I had G.I. Joe, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I had your CBS fare and your NBC and your ABC stuff. Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, the Mario Brothers show, you know, all that. But when it gets into...
I just remembered the theme to that show. The Brothers. Yeah, the Brothers. What?
Hey, give it to the wrestlers. Give it to the WWE for, or was it WWE or WWF at the time? I don't remember.
WWF then. It turned to WWE in like 2003, I think.
When I got to give it to the WWF for totally buying in on that whole Mario Brothers stuff. Because who was it besides Lou Albano? Wasn't there a whole bunch of other... Didn't the Iron Sheik show up in that show?
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure a whole bunch of wrestlers. Let's see. Which wrestlers...
I want to say it was Lou Albano and Charlie Callis
showed up in the Mario Brothers show. The Mario Brothers Super Show. Here we go. 10 surprising cameos by WWF. Oh, this one says... Man,
Roddy Piper.
Somebody messed up. They say WWE wrestlers. Oh,
Sergeant Slaughter.
So Captain Lou Albano, of course, obviously. Oh, this is one of those clickbait sites. No wonder they have WWE.
Don't do it.
Sergeant Slaughter showed up, of course. He was a big one. Then Roddy Piper
Hudson showed up as a Ghostbuster. I know.
Roddy Piper. Steve Austin showed up as what? Oh, this is just WWE wrestlers in cartoons, not in.
Yeah, Steve Austin was
Mario
not
Brothers.
in.
I was like, Steve. That's what tripped me up. I was like, $6 Million Man. Oh no, not that Steve Austin. Well, amazing place where Mario and 80s pro wrestling came together. Yeah, that had Roddy Piper, Sergeant Slaughter on it.
Yeah, but in 1989, Steve Austin would have still been the ringmaster over in World Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, I guess it's just those three that showed up in the Mario Brothers.
Yeah, but they had Lyle Alzado, and I'm sure they had
Lyle Alzado. Which one was he?
You remember Lyle Alzado? He wasn't a wrestler. He was like a football dude.
What? No, who's the one with the rubber bands all in his face that was in all the Cyndi Lauper stuff?
That's Lou Albano.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it looked something out different. The 80s, it was such a wash of crappy VHS.
Lou Albano was Mario, dude.
Right.
He was the main character.
I know, but I don't remember, you know, when you look at the Cyndi Lauper video, I always forget and think that there was another guy that had all the rubber bands in his face and not not Luke.
Goonies are good enough.
Well, that's what they say. You ever remember
whoa.
Do you ever remember Friday night videos?
Yes. Oh, God, I loved Friday night videos.
Before MTV, there was Friday night videos.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, now, let me ask you this. This may be a little weird because
this was an NBC show. It was on for like 20 years.
Was it on for 20 years? I mean, yeah, because it started
it
started in like the 60s or something.
Started in like 81, 82, I want to say.
Yeah, so in the early 80s, before, well, maybe around the same time that MTV launched, if you didn't have, there was a whole thing when MTV launched about I want my MTV. That was their whole slogan call thing that they had going on. Because they wanted kids to go up to their parents and say, I want my MTV. The only way we can do it is if we get on the cable. We got to get on the cable so I can get my MTV. But for those of us that didn't have cable, and my parents still don't have cable to this day.
Well, that just seems wrong.
We switched them about, maybe 10 years ago. My sister and I bought them satellite TV.
Oh, that's nice, yes.
Yeah, so they can get all their sports channels and stuff, but they don't go for the full-blown satellite TV package. They go for whatever the generic Telstar satellite package is.
Telstar. Da-da-dun. Da-da-dun.
But for those of us that weren't on the cable, there was this show called Friday Night Videos where they would play essentially the top videos from MTV.
On Friday night.
On Friday nights. And so for us, it was on like, I want to say after midnight. And I don't know if it's because the TV station didn't want to play that dirty, filthy rock and roll music, or if there was another reason for it.
I think it was actually on at night.
It was at night because I remember so this is the part that gets weird and I was going to ask you about but you had cable, so this may not apply to you. Like my friend Tim, who lived down the road from me, would come over and we would try to stay up as late as we could so we could watch Friday night videos. This would have been like middle school, like 7th and 8th grade.
Okay.
And if we couldn't, we would record them. And then the next week or the next day or something, we would get up and we would watch the Friday night videos on VHS the next morning.
That's cool.
I don't know if you did anything like that because we couldn't see them anywhere else.
I want to say Friday night videos was on at midnight when it was 90 minutes. And then it was shortened later along the line because late night was on. Late night would come on after Carson, and then Friday night video was after late night with David Letterman.
Yeah, so it was like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning when that show came on.
For us, because we're in the Central Time.
Yeah. So it would have been like 2 a.m. East Coast time and probably 1 o'clock West Coast time.
Yep.
But just Friday night videos. That was a crazy thing back in the day. And I guess maybe that's why I like Stranger Things.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you still haven't watched that show.
I have not, no.
You really should. I would be interested to see what your reaction is to the first season. I didn't like the second season as much because it just totally goes down the aliens rabbit hole.
Right. I haven't seen the first season.
Yeah, watch the first season because it just seems to embrace the 80s, not into the nostalgia. You see this nostalgia, kids? Remember all these things? To the point where it's just like, yeah, this is set in the 80s, and these are all the things that were around in the 80s, and here are a bunch of nerd kids, and here are the things that they would have been into in the 80s had this really happened in the 80s.
So like the Goldbergs.
Yes, but no, the Goldbergs, in my opinion, this is my opinion, the Goldbergs called out so much of the 80s stuff. They're like, see what we're doing? This is the 80s. See, kids? And then there would be things like, hey, we're in Pennsylvania, right? Right? The story takes place in Pennsylvania, yet when you go outside, there's palm trees and it's nice, even though it's the middle of winter, See what we mean by the 80s and all this stuff is real? And it's like, no, that kind of falls apart. What Stranger Things does is it's like, okay, in the 80s, you had like a couple of different kind of bikes that kids would have. You'd have the BMX bike, you would have the banana seat bike, and then you might have like the JCPenney's or the Sears special bike, right?
Yeah.
And so kids in the TV show have those bikes based on their socioeconomic status of that time period.
Yep.
And it's kind of cool to see just that kind of stuff play out. And the clothing is right on, the hairstyles are right on, and it's not like, hey, see this cool guy with his hair? See how 80s this guy is? It's like, no, here's a guy, and he looks and he dresses the part of someone who is in the 80s. And I think that's why I like the show so much is because they did try to pay as much of attention to detail as they could for that show.
That's cool.
No, I think you should watch it. Plus the whole 11 thing and the thing and the thing. Oh man, I think the great Nate Owen and I talked about that.
The on thing
our
of
Finally
the thing
Friday show for like a month and a half when that thing was going on. We couldn't stop talking about it, how good that show was.
I have taped but have not watched season 2 of Westworld too. So
the finale is done, so now I'm tempted to go and watch that.
I'm behind on everything, so.
Me too. What are the shows that are on your queue of things that you need to watch?
Queue of things to watch. Well, my wife has a bunch of procedurals like Criminal Minds and The Usual Suspects and crap like that. I've got a bunch of Westworld that I need to watch. I want to catch up with Luke Cage season 2, which I think is out now.
Yeah, it came out last week on Friday.
Yeah, I still haven't finished The Defenders. I mean, I've got a bunch of stuff that I could watch. I want to go back and watch Fantastic Planet again. Maybe J-Men Forever. Fantastic Planet, yeah. It's this French weirdo cartoon from like 1973 where the aliens are floating around, and there's aliens, and there's giant ones, and then there's little ones.
I'm trying to remember if...
The little ones are called ohms because it's French, and the giant ones are called drags because it's hippie talk, and they're a drag.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I've seen this. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that I saw on Night Flight, oddly enough, 1,000,000 times. But it's one of those films that you never quite forget it.
Yeah, because it's weird and trippy and makes you have weird dreams and freaks you out in the middle of the night.
Yeah, like Andy Warhol's Frankenstein or Reefer Madness, or or the terror of Tiny Town, or Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Oh man, Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Or, Night of the Living Dead, which the retro channel, which is like channel 155 for me, keeps playing Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
And I always watch it.
Yeah, because it's copyright free.
Well, I always watch it because it's amazing. But more importantly, Widget will always walk in and she'll be like, is this the one where they ran out of film at the end, so they had to do the still frames and it was super scary? And I'm like, yes, baby, that's what it is. And she's like, oh, this one scares me. I'm going away now. Snapchat Tinder blipper.
It's really fascinating because when you look at, I'm sure there's an article here somewhere. So I'm just thinking, outside of my head. Of course, that's what this show's all about, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't figured it out by now, stream of consciousness. We're going to bring in Rodrigo and Ashley maybe when they get in here, and we'll just continue to roll for you.
Maybe
if they get here. I mean, we still got a little bit of time. But it's really weird to follow the rise of B movies as they correspond to the rise of VHS, right? And the home video rental release. Because yes, there would have been your Grindhouse films. Sure. But those would have been small and few and far between. And yes, we do have the dumb monster movies and those kinds of things. The schlock that they needed to fill 50s television and 50s movie theaters with.
Exactly.
But as the movie theater starts to dwindle in the 80s, or maybe I shouldn't say movie theaters are dwindling in the 80s, but as the movie theater palace becomes, or the large movie theater becomes the megaplex, there's a rise in cheaper movies. And with the success of some cheaper movies, and I don't mean cheap as in they look cheap or are cheap.
Well, some are.
Some are, but I mean, when you look at some of the, what is like,
Plan 9 Star Wars outer space.
Plan 9. No, that one would be, but that's way before. I'm talking about like, what's a Star Wars ripoff movie?
Dark Star.
Dark Star. Man, that's even more low budget than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, that's James Cameron, right? Dark Star?
It's either Cameron or John Carpenter.
Yeah.
But it's way early and it's way, way crap.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like, there's a bunch of late 70s, early 80s Star Wars ripoff type movies.
Silent Running.
Yeah. Silent Running. Or, to a lesser extent, The Thing, which was, would have been a movie that falls into this category where, yes, because you have those other screens, you can throw those up there. But then you have a bunch of movies that are like, hey, these cheap movies are being made. We could make even cheaper movies and cash in on this VHS success.
Right.
And if the kids aren't at the mall at this time period, they're at the video rental store because that's what you do in the evening. And so, you know, the Class of Nukem High and those kind of slasher grody,
yes.
You know, the trauma type films
really
have a bigger rise on VHS than they did during the single screen theater.
And of course, you know, you also have the VHS market for movies like Faces of Death that would never make it to a theater.
Right.
I mean, those first 3 Faces of Death movies, while not nearly as terrifying as they would be if they were actually real, because they are not what they are purported to be.
Right.
But they
watermelon head exploding kind of thing.
They are creepy as F-bomb. And you know, the local video joint when I was in college, 1989, 1990, 1991, here in town, because my roommate actually lived here. He introduced me to my wife, and that's why I live here now. But that's not the point. The local video store had all of those movies, and one night we're like, hey, we want to watch these things. And the answer was no. But eventually we did watch them, and I realized 2 things about them. They were designed to capitalize on the same market that was buying the pornography, the things that you could not go to. You couldn't go to a movie theater and see.
Right.
And they were just as unrealistic and terrible as, you know, the pornography that you got in the 70s and 80s. You know, you would get these movies that were not just B movies or low budget movies, but they are specifically designed to tap into a market of, you can't see this on television. You can't see this on film. You can't go to, you know, any reputable drive-in movie and sit and watch this. You have to watch this on VHS in your own home in the dark, with or without friends.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try, because Skype forced an update, so I'm no longer among Skype Classic. So let me see if I can add everybody into this group.
Okay, I'll stay here.
Creating a shiny new conversation. Let's see if you drop off or what's going on here.
Like the eagle on the mountain, my spirit must
you're still there.
There's a bond between the eagle and the sky.
Let's see, who's that? Hello?
I heard a bee-boop.
So did I.
Who's the bee-boop?
Hello?
Bark twice if you're in Milwaukee. Other lands and other challenges are calling out to you.
Well, I don't want to do that. Fly. Oh, man. How does this work? It's like, it used to be just like right-click on these people and add them to the call. And now it's like, what the what? All right, let's see. Let's see if I can add to favorites, view profiles.
Click the button.
No, it doesn't even let me do that.
I kick this button. Push that button. Play the Battle of the Planets intro.
Oh, man. Battle of the Planets and the Justice League theme song are the exact same.
They are similar but different.
So exactly the same. I'm telling you. You can be connected to only one call at a time. Okay, I may lose you here. Hold on, just...
All right.
Why can I not... this is so dumb.
Battle of the planets.
Hey, here we go. Let's see if we can do this. Add to... Oh, see, now that's so much better. There we go. Now let's see if we can... There we go. Oh, I may have still lost Matthew. You still there, Matthew? Nope, he's still there.
I'm here.
Okay. Superman, Wonder Woman, Zan and Jaina from their secret headquarters.
Invincible.
From the Hall of Justice.
Always
These
five
are
acting as
the
one.
Super Friends.
G-Force. I'm telling you, they're different songs, Stephen.
I don't think so. Rodrigo, are you there?
I heard him.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, we already started recording the show, so we're like a half hour in. So we've just been talking. Chatting.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
It's Barry and live on. $240 worth of pudding. Oh, yeah. But Steven maintains that the theme to Battle of the Planets, which goes dun 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 dun, is the exact same as the theme to Super Friends, which goes. How does it go, Steven?
Bum 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 bum.
Those are clearly different. Those are completely different.
I think they're the same song.
Banded together from remote galaxies, 13 of the most vicious jerk faces and a gorilla.
Hey, don't be that way about Gleek.
Talking about Gorilla Grodd, you student.
Gorilla Grodd.
Challenge of the Super Friends.
What's new with Rodrigo this week?
What is new? Not much.
Are you watching soccer's? Mexico's into the next round.
Yes. I mean, I'm kind of keeping tabs on it. My schedule's all over the place, so I don't really get to watch a lot of games.
And I'm sure with your clients, you're not watching. They're not into soccer.
Some of them are. So,
really?
Some of them
cool.
don't, or some of them don't care. Yeah, I've gotten to watch like seriously a couple of games out of the whole World Cup, and nothing that Mexico's in, which is of course why they're winning, because my own personal superstition is that whenever I watch Mexico play an actual game, they lose. Now that doesn't stop them from losing a game that I don't watch.
Yeah.
But I've never seen Mexico win a game. And so this is what I am doing for all of you fans of the Mexican national selection. I am not watching any of the games.
So the boy,
just so that Mexico gets a shot.
The boy has watched nearly every single game to date. Today he was not able to because for some reason they were playing 4 games a day right now, I guess to get caught up or something. So they had 2 games going on at the same time. But in the morning, he gets up, and my wife turns on like the first game of the morning, which is at like 7 o'clock. And so he'll watch that until it's time to go to soccer practice. Then he'll go to soccer practice or to conditioning or whatever that he has. And then we're back at 11. He eats lunch, and then he spends like, he'll catch the second half of the second game. And then at 1 o'clock, he watches the third game. And then this past weekend, man, it was like, the TV was never off, and everyone was screaming at the top of their lungs for every single team. Oh yeah, and of course his favorite team. Can you guys guess what his favorite team is?
Croatia.
No, although I think
France.
Croatia is out.
Russia.
No, please.
Edgar Allan Poe.
No, he is a big fan of Argentina because Messi is on the Argentinian team.
Yeah, Messi's been having a rough World Cup.
Oh, yeah, but today, oh, man. The 2 goals, I think he scored 2 today, were just fantastic.
I think it was 1.
1 today, okay.
Yeah.
And I think he went out.
The one on the weekend was just fantastic. I mean, when he scores, his stuff is just a thing of beauty. But yeah, he's been watching them. He wants them to win. And then second, he wants... Is it Brazil?
Brazil's got those pretty flags, man.
Wow, your kids going after rooting for Brazil and Argentina.
Oh man, I was never Mexico, but it would be Argentina, Brazil, and then Mexico would be the 3 in the order that he would root for as they move forward.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to compare, but rooting for Brazil or Argentina in the World Cup is kind of like rooting for the Bulls back when Jordan was playing, back when that whole dream team was playing. Like Brazil and Argentina are colossal teams, and they always have been, and they have a huge history of having won a whole bunch of World Cups.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, so it's honestly, if that's where he's putting his chips, one of those is very likely to cash in.
Yeah. Well, the main reason for Argentina, of course, is Messi, because that is his hero. But this kid knows, like, I'm impressed. When I was a kid, I've never been into, like sports, like, oh yeah, I'll know who, the quarterback is of this team, and I'll know who maybe a star player is on this team. Maybe. Don't quiz me because I couldn't tell you right now.
Sure.
There's a guy named Tony Robo. Tony Robo that plays football, right?
No. Tony Robo is in that Monkey Brain Comics book.
But
he was created by Tesladyne.
This kid knows like every team member on every team in the World Cup. I mean, it's weird. He's just like, oh yeah, so this guy plays this and he does this, and this is where he normally plays, and normally this team does this. And I remember as a kid, there were people that would memorize all the stats and all the players or just absorb it. He is that way with soccer.
Sure.
It's crazy weird. I mean, it's neat, but it's also crazy weird.
Everybody's got to do something.
Oh, no, I know. But and so it's just like he comes home tired from soccer. And I'm just like, hey, whatever, man, if you want to just relax because you're tired and worn out from the day and you want to just watch soccer and veg out, that's fine by me, because at least you're watching something that you are truly interested in and you want to make a career out of. And maybe this will help you understand how competitive it can be. So I'm totally cool with that. But apparently not a lot of our listeners are big fans of the World Cup.
No. Well, so first off, the U.S. didn't make it in.
Well,
right?
yes,
so,
because the U.S. sucks, but that's okay.
A lot of Americans don't. So in other countries, there's kind of this general culture that you have your team and probably a team you hate, but you kind of still watch soccer, or in other countries usually soccer. Right. In the US, like football or basketball or whatever,
or hockey,
and you kind of still watch for the fun of it. And I think Americans to a certain degree, there's Monday Night Football, two teams that you don't particularly care about will be playing, but I think the culture is different.
The good thing is since like 94, when MLS was first coming on board here, there has been a huge growth in the interest in soccer in the United States, because I have seen this go from, oh yeah, here's this free streaming service where you can go watch some of these games if they have a webcam set up and maybe they have a college kid announcing it, to the MLS.com app, which we've been subscribers to for years so that we can watch all the games that we can, to probably within the last 3 years, a sudden switch to, oh, sorry, all these games are blocked out on your MLS app because they're currently on one of the 4 channels in your cable system that are playing these games. To where before, like 3 years ago, none of those channels would have been doing any of the soccer stuff live. And now, like main Fox channel will have Sporting KC on a Saturday night. So there's really been a big, at least maybe regionally here, soccer in Kansas, is, especially in the Kansas City region, has always been big and huge. And I would imagine in places like Los Angeles and Orlando and maybe Miami also are probably big soccer hubs. But it just seems to me that there's just been a growing interest in soccer in the United States over the last, 25 years.
I've come across a lot of articles and videos talking about why the U.S. didn't make it into the World Cup. And there seems to be this kind of general idea that it was incompetence, not just from the players, but coaching. And not really so much for the players, but it's a coaching and a management problem, because you might say it's like, well, in the United States, the funding just isn't there and the interest just isn't there. But the women's selection, the women's national team has won multiple World Cups.
Yep.
So it's like, imagine that. Imagine if you're saying the interest is not there for a men's sport. Imagine how little funding and interest there is for a women's sport. Right. It's like traditionally, and yet those girls are like consistently knocking it out of the park. Well, they are one of the top teams in the world. So it has to be a management problem.
Well, there's also, I think, something else. And it's something that the boys team is starting to see a lot of last year and we'll see going forward. Because when you're young, you have a couple of things you can do. You can go do soccer, which, like every family here in town who has a young kid puts their kid in the rec soccer, right? Which is local games, teams, just really fundamental skills kind of stuff. You've got T-ball, And then you've got maybe Pee Wee football, but not too much of that. There's not too much of that for the young age kids. So for a majority of these kids, they're all playing soccer from like kindergarten to 5th grade. But then in 5th grade, something happens. They start playing baseball. And so baseball takes over. And we've had a lot of kids on the team who have said, well, I can't go to the soccer tournament this weekend because I've got a baseball tournament that I'm going to go do. Mm-hmm. And then when you get into school, of course, in the 6th and 7th, not 6th grade, because they don't allow them to play competitively. But then in 7th and 8th grade, now the kids have basketball, which is a big item, football, which is a big item. And of course, you go football, which is a fall sport, basketball, which is the spring sport, and then baseball is the summer sport traditionally. And so soccer gets pushed aside. For the girls, though, that's not the case. They've got volleyball. They've got maybe softball if the school has a softball team, but not many do, and soccer. So the girls end up playing soccer far longer than boys typically do. That's my observation of it. And so when it comes to a World Cup thing, you've got girls who have been literally playing soccer since they could walk because of the way the sports system is broken out between men and women. But boys get pulled off into about 4 different directions once they hit 7th grade. And so you don't have as many kids who are, playing soccer as opposed to the ones that are playing football or baseball or basketball. That's an observation. But you also are right, Rodrigo, that there is a lot more going on for the women's team in soccer than the men's team.
I don't think that is. I mean, managerially there is.
Well,
it's
impossible as far as they're a much better team.
Yeah, it's impossible to track down like a women's soccer game that's not a college game.
Right.
Right.
So
it's really amazing that given all those resources, the U.S. could make it. It's like the U.S. Faces off against lots of other teams, and there's lots of opportunity to recruit other players. So it is just like not having the right combination of like management and coaching and maybe player mentality.
Scott G says no, but I'm not excited about football, basketball, baseball, or any professional sport. I do like athletics though. Shane says I try and watch every match. England, and they barely scrape through.
England. You have to say it with an accent.
Malone says, I'm sort of excited. I don't have any definitive favorite, but I'll watch matches whenever I get the time. And then Justin says, I love the World Cup. It is really cutting into my sleep here on the West Coast. Gaming starts at, games at 5, 7, and 9 and 11 a.m., which, that's rough. Luckily, those can find a good...
in Finland, isn't he?
I think so. But Justin, if you're on the West Coast, man, you're in luck because if you like to drink early in the morning, you can find a soccer bar that will be open for that 5 a.m. game.
Okay. Let's not start sentences with if you like to drink early in the morning.
Even if you don't like to drink early in the morning, going to a bar to watch the sporting event is so much more fun in a crowd when everyone's screaming and cheering and jumping at the same time.
True. That's true. Otter and I went to a WCW pay-per-view back in about 98 or 99. And we actually found ourselves cheering for Hollywood Hogan because the crowd was so into him, even though Diamond Dallas Page should have won the match.
Yeah,
just should have.
Do you have the voting finals there, Matthew?
You want I should check for them?
I mean, if you don't have them, I've got them here in front of me.
Oh, I can get them. Do you know how? I'll tell you how. I'll go to majorspoilers.com. It's my favorite website. I go there every day, and they haven't whitelisted it at work, but it's okay because I'm sneaky.
Why would they? Why would they whitelist it?
Well, whitelisting means that I'm allowed to go there.
Oh, okay.
Well, this is the thing about it. I'm actually allowed to go there, and I'm actually allowed to go in and edit stuff, but if I try and press the save button, it won't save because it's not allowed to save on WordPress. It's not a thing that happens. Right now, a whopping 32% of the vote, which is more than I expected, saying yes, they are excited for FIFA's World Cup. 68% saying nope. So about a 2-to-1 margin, but still, I was expecting more like a 5-to-1 or 6-to-1.
Yeah. No, that's all right.
Because, granted, we have an international fan base, so it's not like we're all going to be like, well, Americans just don't care about football. Because they don't, but, well, people are idiots too. And it is called football. You have to say football.
It's okay. It's okay if you're not
must say
into
football. Look, I'm an old school nerd. You have to call the movie Akira. It's Super Sentai, not Japanese Power Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a thing.
Could be Japanese Power Rangers if you wanted to call it that.
Man, you wanna get into pronunciation issues?
No, I'm watching because I'm horrible at it, as you point out every time.
Yes, I'm watching the second season of Dirk Gently.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
And there is a family at the center of it, and it's a Hispanic family,
mm-hmm.
and their name is spelled Cardenas, right? Which is in Spanish would be pronounced Cardenas.
Oh, okay, I was going to say Cardenas.
And if you anglicize it, presumably it would be Cardenas or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cardenas,
but
yeah.
Everybody calls it Cardenas. It's like the Cardenas. Gotta go to the Cardenas house, and it's like the word Cardenas gets said like between 2 and 10 times in an episode, and it just like drives me up the wall. And it's like, yeah, I guess it's like that is. There's lots of names that. When Texas kind of like when they flipped Texas over and it was like red, white, and blue underneath, and now is part in the United States.
Yep.
It's like all those people just became Americans, and they're like, well, we're not going to fight everybody. I'll be Perez if you're Cardenas.
Yep. And that's the thing, Also, Steve Cardenas played the second Red Ranger on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Neither here nor there. I used to work with a girl. And oh God, now I can't remember her name. But her last name had an Enye in it.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew it, and her mother knew it, and everybody in the family knew it. But they literally would not pronounce it that way because no one ever could. And so it always broke my heart because I would pronounce the Enye because I know how to pronounce an Enye, man.
Mm-hmm.
And she would be like, well, that's not how we pronounce our name. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a bummer. She's like, yeah, my mom just stopped fighting about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hurts. Well, Zoe Saldana.
That's true.
Yep.
Very true. Or as we like to call her, all the girls in all the science fiction movies.
Yep.
It's amazing how many of those she's in. I'm sure we've talked about that before, so no need to go into it again. Somebody wanted us to talk about this DC Comics at Walmart thing.
Okay.
How weird. I mean, I don't think it's weird, but there's a weird story that has popped up kind of adjacent to this. So if people aren't aware, and I don't know if Rodrigo, if you saw this, but DC Comics has struck a deal with Walmart to sell 100-page monthly.
I did see the comics. I did see the comics. I didn't see the weird story.
Okay, so for $4.99, each 100-page anthology features an all-new story written exclusively for that book. So Tom King is in there. Brian Michael Bendis is in there. Andy Kubert is in there. What's his name? Jimmy Palmiotti is doing an original one in this. And so you've got the Superman Giant, which has Superman special chapter, and then you've got a bunch of reprints, the Terrific, Green Lantern, Superman, Batman. You got the Teen Titans Giant, which includes Super Sons, Sideways, and Teen Titans #1. Batman Giant #1 that has Batman 608, Nightwing #1, Harley Quinn #1, and then Batman, Justice League of America Giant, which includes the original story from Tim Seeley, and then Justice League 1, Flash 1, Aquaman 1, and some other stuff going on from there. $4.99, which I think is a great deal for 100 pages.
That's a great price for 100 pages.
And people are like, oh my God, Walmart's finally selling comic books. Walmart sold comic books for years. I posted a picture a couple of years ago saying, hey, look, now that my comic book store is closed here, here's a picture of where I'm going to get my comic books. And it's this box pop-up thing that they have in the little tchotchke thing at the checkout that has these bagged comics in there. And so circulating around the internet right now are pictures of what this 100-page giant thing is going to look like. It looks like the same box. It's the exact same box that's going to hold these comics. So here's where it gets weird, and I wanted to get your guys' reactions to this. First weird story related to this is, oh my God, I can't believe that the publishers are selling out the comic book stores with these exclusive things to get people to go to Walmart and not the comic book shop. How dare they? This is the end of comic book shops. I don't understand that because, first of all, and maybe it's just I'm not traveling in the right circles for this, but when it comes to those pop vinyls, those Funkos, Walgreens and Toys R Us, when they were alive,
Right.
Had exclusives figures, even with the mini mates the mini mates that Diamond Select Toys puts out. They have Walgreens exclusives of those figures, where if you want them, you have to go to that store to pick them up. Steve Jackson Games has done exclusive Walgreens exclusives for their Munchkin Land game. But I don't see those. I don't see gamers complaining that they have to go to Walgreens. I don't see toy collectors complaining that they have to go to Walgreens. I don't see specialty stores complaining that, Walgreens is getting this Spider-Man 2099 Pop Funko, and they're not. But man, when it comes to this 100-page original story thing, it's like local shops are having a fit over it. And here's the weird story number 2. This was reported on another site. Reports are that some of these comic shops are starting to talk with one another about going out and raiding Walmart to buy up these comics in bulk if they can get a discount, and then marking the prices up and selling them in their store.
Is that
a way of saying? I mean, it's not illegal. I mean, it's just like if you go in and, if I can go in and take a comic book that I have and sell it to my comic shop, and then they're going to put a sticker on it and either sell it for a higher price than the cover price, or they'll mark it down to 25 cents and someone can come in and buy a used comic. Technically, it would be a used comic. Walmart's going to get its money or a portion of its money.
Right.
But that is this. I'll be honest.
Are people really considering doing that?
This is literally, there are shops that are like, yes, we're going to go raid these Walmart stores, get these, and we're going to bring them back to our stores and sell them because we can't sell them. How dare they do this? And it's like, I'm sorry, but this is the silliest idea I have heard all week.
I mean, it is for a lot of reasons. It's like, first off, it's just so difficult for me to imagine that someone who actually runs a store would consider this.
Walmart is stealing my customers.
It's like, if you go and you pay for those comics, you've paid for those comics. Like, somebody went and bought those comics, right? That tells Walmart that there's something to this.
Yes, go on.
That tells DC that there's something to this.
Yes.
And they're going to move to expand that partnership.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So on the most obvious sense, it's like I'm really reminded of there was this thing going on where I want to say when 4th edition D&D came out and like people started really, really getting riled up against it. I saw this thing online where people are like, we're going to go in and we're going to buy these PHBs and then we're going to destroy them.
Yes.
Like PHB being players' handbooks, right? You see that a lot. You see that, it's like people are like, oh, this rap music is sinful. And they buy all the CDs.
Yeah.
And then they destroy them.
Comics fans have done the same thing. I just bought this Captain America book and I'm so outraged I'm burning it. And I went out and bought 10 more and I'm burning them too. It's like, okay.
To give a brief glimpse into what's going on now, NFL fans did that, right? With the protests at the beginning of the games, some people were like so upset about it. They're like, I'm burning my, Cowboys jersey or whatever. And it's like, I mean, you already paid for that. It's like, you're not hurting anybody. Like, you're literally only helping if you're spending money and then not enjoying the product.
Well, that was the same way with the boycott the Han Solo movie, where people were tweeting from inside the theater. I'm inside the theater in the Han Solo show, and there's only a third of the theater is full. That's right, boycott. And it's like, well, you just bought a ticket, dum-dum.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of like that. So that's the obvious reason why this is a bad idea. But maybe the not so obvious reason, which again, if you are like have the economics background to be running a store, you'd think you'd know this, is that, a rising tide kind of raises all ships to a certain degree.
Exactly.
Is like those comics are meant to be first tastes, right?
Yeah.
They clearly are. The moment that I saw that, I was like, this is smart. They have something at the rack at Walmart. kids are like, "Mom, buy me this," and the mom is like, "My God, what is my life?" And then they buy it, and then the kid likes it, and then they can go to a comic book store, or wherever. They can go to Comixology. They can go wherever. This is money into the comic book industry.
I know, right?
It's practically free advertising for your local comic shop, because if a kid picks up this comic or an adult picks up this comic and they like it, then they're gonna go out looking for more, and that's when a specialty shop can step in, because even if this gets very successful, Walmart is never going to have everything. Walmart is probably not going to be, even if they somehow started carrying back issues, they wouldn't have very many, Right. So it's like this only helps, and this idea that like any nickel that goes to Walmart instead of to the comic book shop is bad is really just not seeing the planet for the trees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It is, to me, doesn't make any sense that you would go and do that, except that, because people will want this original story, they will come to our store and they'll pay what I'm charging, and they won't go to Walmart because Walmart is destroying America from the inside. Which I'm not disagreeing that true. I'm not disagreeing that Walmart isn't destroying America from the inside. But it does bring up this weirder notion for me of why you want to hurt somebody else's enjoyment of comics. Why do you want to, I mean, if my kids, they go down that aisle that has all the baseball cards and the Magic the Gathering cards and the Pokemons and the little action figures at Walmart, and they look at that stuff and they may see that comic book and go, yeah, I want to buy that. That's a new kid into comics. Yeah. Why would you want to destroy bringing new people into comics by that kind of a stunt? I am really confused. Matthew, please explain this to me. You worked at a place called Gatekeeper. What is the deal about wanting to gatekeep this fandom?
I don't think that's what they meant.
No, it's not. The thing about gatekeeping fans, I think for me, is they don't want new fans. Because that's the point where you're like, oh, well, these new people are fake fans, or they've sold out to get these new fans, and nothing is the same as it ever was. And you see it everywhere. You see that in music, you see it in sports fandom, you see it in comic fandom, you see it in all brand of nerdery. That gatekeeping issue is we don't want everybody to be a part of our thing, because our thing should be special and rarefied and should be a stratum that you can't just walk into. And that's the thing. You can, and you should.
I know. And you should be
the more
embracing.
People that do, the more chance there is of this actually surviving, because DC and Marvel are already treating the comics like essentially disposable loss leaders.
Right. They have
for other forms of
They have
media.
to keep their IP alive. Yeah.
Sure. But, if you look at the speed at which they are strip mining the ideas of the past 80 years, it's not going to be any further than our lifetimes when they run out of ideas. I mean, there isn't going to be any more source material. The Iron Man movies cut through 50 years of Iron Man, just whoosh like that, and bailed it up and put it into a little, thingamathingama.
Well, you're assuming that Iron Man's coming back.
Oh, Iron Man's coming back. He is.
I mean, in some form, Iron Man's coming back.
There'll be more Iron Man. It may not be Tony Stark, but there'll be more Iron Man.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I'm hoping we see is I'm hoping that this, not just a deal like this with Walmart bringing in a revenue stream to keep DC making the comics, but that somehow the fact that Robert Downey Jr. won't be around forever means that they'll have to replace Iron Man in the movies. They'll have to replace Grant Gustin in the TV show, or they'll have to replace whomever it is, this live action version of it, which may make it easier to actually have a replacement stick in the comics. And I'm not talking, the Green Lantern way, where every time we get a replacement, Hal comes back anyway, and they all stick around. And that's why Earth has 19 frickin' Green Lanterns now, because every time we reboot, we have to also bring back the old thing just in case someone gets upset. I'm really hoping that having live action actors who don't want to do this anymore, or who age out of the role, or who frankly just don't give a damn and aren't coming back, will make it easier for some of these changes to actually stick in the comic material.
Well, I again, my idea is, and I don't think there's as much, maybe not as much gatekeeping in sports, because everybody, sports fans want to talk sports, and if there's a new person, sure, there's the "Are you a true sports fan?" talk. But if it's like, "Hey, buddy, are you a Chiefs fan? Come and sit down with us. We're going to watch this game. Here's a beard." Burp, 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 and everybody's like, "Yeah, Chiefs," or "Yeah, Broncos," or "Yeah, your favorite team." Insert the blank here.
Yeah, Brazil. That football team is so good. But then he said football.
Then when we talk about like Miles Morales, the upcoming animated movie that comes out this Christmas, and oh my gosh, I cannot wait to see that movie.
Yeah.
That movie looks so freaking cool. Or the rumor that there's going to be a Cindy Moon Silk series or a movie. People are like, well, how can you do that if you don't have Spider-Man in there?
Hey.
And I don't know what to say to those people. I just don't let's embrace.
Hey.
Let's embrace the person who's out there going, I think I would like to get into comic books. What would you recommend? Well, here you go, potential reader. Let me recommend all this stuff to you.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, please ask. We've got, some other people over there at the racks that will be happy to tell you all their thoughts and dreams about the Fantastic Four.
It's like, apparently, from what I understand, the 80s and early 90s were the heyday of comics, right?
Sure, 90s, yes. Let's say 90s, yes.
They were comics.
Right before Marvel had to file for bankruptcy.
We're not talking quality. Let's talk economics,
quantity,
right?
Sure.
It's like at no point in history were people buying more comics in the United States than at that point, right? So I was a kid in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there were places that had comics, like grocery stores had comics, and newsstands had comics, and pharmacies. Like pharmacies were like comic stores, basically. It's like you went to the pharmacy to look for comics. Your grandma didn't, but you did. So
she went for like ointment.
Yeah, at the like zenith of comic book buying, all of these things were true. All of these things were around, and I think they helped. This is how people got into comics back in the day. Was you just saw a like X-Force number 12, and you were like, "What even is this?"
Right. Well, it also helped that you had limited media outlets, and everybody watched Entertainment Tonight. So when Entertainment Tonight says Superman's dying, or the New York Times New York Times is saying, "Hey, the death of Superman," and it's in every newspaper, even our hometown paper here had an article on page 2 or 3 that said, "Hey, in December or whatever it was, Superman's going to die at the hands of some unknown entity." And this was like 6-8 months before the event. And of course, that when you have that limited thing, everybody's talking about it, which is why, again, you see so many comic book artists going on the late night talk show circuits or showing up on Good Morning America or the morning shows to spoil some giant comic thing, because they still think that that's the way to reach out and get the mass audience and hope that they all flock down to their local comic shop to pick up Death of Superman or The Return of Superman or The Marriage of Colossus and Kitty Pryde. Oh, wait. Sorry. Bad example there.
Too soon, dude. Too soon.
Sorry. But today, maybe media is too fractured to get out that hype engine and strike it up. So hype engine. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. Embrace, people. Embrace. And also, don't use the "you're not a real fan." I've been "you're not a real fan" fanned recently.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
For comics or for something else?
For comics.
Oh.
I'm not saying that necessarily spending thousands of dollars on a server for your custom comic website makes you a solid fan or not. I'm just saying your bona fides may actually be pretty easy to see.
I think it goes down to the stats. Remember, I was talking a little bit ago about how I'm so impressed that my son knows who all these players are and which teams they play for, and he can rattle them off the top of his head. Right. I can't do that.
Right.
You know, if you ask me to name, 25 X-Men, I could name 10, maybe 15. But because I can't hit that,
You'd be surprised how many X-Men you can name.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Professor X.
Right. That's one.
Colossus. Kitty Pryde. Rogue. Gambit.
Yeah.
Iceman. Mm-hmm. Jean Grey. Wolverine. Cyclops, if I didn't already say him.
Mm-hmm. That's 10.
I already said Gambit. Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who else do I know?
Angel.
No. I'm supposed to say it, not you. But Angel.
Psylocke.
Psylocke.
Yeah.
Is Gloop an X-Men?
Dupe. Yes.
Is he an X-Men? All right.
Yeah. Counts.
Dupe. Shoot. I got one more to hit 15. Hold on.
Who was gonna
Jubilee.
Yeah.
Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jubilee, Beast. I already said Gambit.
Yeah. He's Irish. Who's Irish?
What's his name? Havoc.
The Irish one.
Yeah. What about Sabretooth? Yep. Does he count?
He does.
Sabretooth has in fact been an X-Men.
What about Magneto?
Yep.
Yes.
Also that.
Officially an X-Men.
So that's 20.
Yep.
What's her face? I got a statue of her in the other room. Emma Frost.
Yeah.
Pixie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 3 short of 25.
3 short of 25. Did you mention the one who was going to marry Colossus?
Yeah, Kitty Pryde. I mentioned her.
Did you mention the one who was going to marry the Cyclops?
Yeah,
he did. He hit all the originals because I was looking for those. Pretty sure.
Did you mention the one who just had a big screen outing as Ryan Reynolds?
Oh, well, Deadpool, does he count as an X-Man?
He does. He was officially an X-Men and an X-Men trainee.
All right, so there's 23.
Mm-hmm.
I guess then we'd have to throw in Cable.
Yeah, you can throw in Cable. Cable's officially been an X-Men multiple times.
The guy they both fight in that movie has also been an X-Men.
All right, so there's 25.
Yeah, there you go.
With a little help, but 25.
Yeah.
But because I don't know where all their first appearances, I'm not a real fan.
Yeah. The thing about stuff like that is that people really try to base some chunk of their identity on things like that.
I think that's what it boils down to.
And then they really need to safeguard that because it's part of how they see themselves, right?
Yeah, I think didn't Matthew and I didn't we talk about this, Matthew, when we were doing our flashback podcast about how Harrison Wells this last season based his entire identity on him being the smartest man over everyone. And then the minute he starts to lose some of his smarts, he feels like he's not worthy. He's not a man. He's not qualified to be with that group.
Well, and that's exactly what happens is when you have this self-image that is based on a thing like comics or, I don't know, being like really buff or whatever, then you start getting into problems when one of two things happens. One, somebody who is also into the things you're into just kind of wants to talk about it and you like feel that you need to prove your dominance. And then the other thing is what happens when you meet a buffer nerd than you.
Right.
You know?
And that's the problem.
Yep. It's like
even for me, there is always a bigger fish.
Sure.
I mean, I could name for you 25 X-Men whose names start with the letter M. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm more or less of a fan than Steven. It just means that I know, first of all, there's an X-Man whose actual frickin' name is M.
M.
So that, right? M. And Maggot and Madrox and Mimic and Magic and Magma and Megan and Mean Streak. But you go through all of that, and what that really comes. Oh, you want more?
No.
I say Mimic? Micromax, Marrow,
that's okay.
Marvel Girl, the other Marvel Girl, Mondo, Moonstar, Morph. Mr. Sensitive was in Ecstatics. I think that should count.
Sure.
Mystique.
Oh,
see, there's another Morph. Micromax, Metalhead, Mastermind.
Don't forget Magneto.
Magneto.
And
match.
If it counts, Lady Mastermind.
Lady Mastermind is Mastermind.
And don't forget Mr. Sinister.
Mr. Sinister is not an X-Man, but I'll give you credit for rhyming his name. Mercury.
So
Maggot. Did I say Maggot?
So you did, but that's okay.
We always talk about it's okay to punch up, right?
Right.
But it's not okay to punch down.
Right.
But you always do run into these people that, again, I guess to exert the dominance. Oh, I got to talk about a revelation here in a minute. I think we may have talked about it before, but I'll talk about it here in a minute. In order to exert that dominance, I now come out, and I'm going to use this as an example, Matthew. I'm not picking on you, okay?
Okay.
I come out and I say, I don't know if I can even name 25 X-Men, and I name 25 X-Men with help. And then Matthew's like, well, I'm going to name 25 X-Men with M's. And that's isn't that kind of like punching down?
I would say to some degree, yes. My only excuse is you and I have been friends since the 80s.
That's why I said I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying that this is the most perfect example of this.
Yeah, if Matthew had done that to be like, what, Steven can name 25 X-Men, I can name even more X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but then also he wouldn't have helped you.
Right.
You know, it's like, so yeah, if this had been two strangers measuring the size of their
X-Men Rolodexes.
Yeah.
X-Wang, I believe.
Measuring the size of their Mondos.
Right. But that is also, I think, part of it is there is part of it that is based in maybe a lack of confidence or an expectation that without being the biggest nerd in the room, then who are you? You know, I think we've all had that moment where you're like, this is my thing. This is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it different and better than anybody else. But there's also that point where somebody will come along. You know, Qui-Gon Jinn said it. There is always a bigger fish. And if you don't believe Qui-Gon Jinn because you're a Star Trek fan, Khan Noonien Singh said something equivalent.
It's funny. It's funny you bring that up because isn't that also the same thing that's kind of driving this remake The Last Jedi? I know Rodrigo has many thoughts on this because you kind of had some Twitter snark to share this past week.
Yeah, I've been snarking at it.
If the DC let's go buy out all the Walmart comics is the dumbest story I've heard all this week, the Let's Make The Last Jedi was the dumbest story I heard last week.
Yeah.
You know about this one, Matthew?
Yeah. Okay. And I want to have empathy for the people doing this because I really feel like in their mind, they feel like they're coming from a good place. They feel like something bad happened to something I love and I want to fix it. But it's also something bad happened to something I love and I want to own and control it. And you're just like, no.
Yeah. I talked about this on Finally Friday last week because that was the big day of it. So if you want to hear my complete thoughts on it, I spent about an hour talking about it and how I talk about they'll never be able to remake The Last Jedi and have, Disney approve of this and release it in theaters and all that kind of stuff. But I am a big fan of them going out and making a fan film because I really believe in participatory culture in that not only do we consume stuff, we're also creating stuff. This podcast is a perfect example of participatory culture. We go out and we consume pop culture. We go out and read the comic books. We go out and buy the product, and then we want to talk about it. So I'm a big fan of that. And we're making something that is generated out of our love or our desire to be part of this community. And I really feel like that's maybe what they should do with this remake, The Last Jedi.
Yeah, it's like, if it's a fan film, and if it's a fan film that addresses anxieties that you have, or issues that you have with the film, then that's fine. That has been fan culture forever.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. It's like, and then Kirk gave Spock a little smooch.
Well,
and it's like, but even that has been around for as long as Star Trek has been around, which is now 1,000,000 years.
I went back and was doing some research because I was prepping for that Finally Friday show. About fan fiction was around as the 1860s. Fan fiction was appearing and people were printing their own little things. There
is massive amounts of Sherlock Holmes fan fiction that came out as Sherlock Holmes books were coming out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. But some people had asked me this week, how come Finally Friday, the audio version of it did not appear on the RSS feed, the Major Spoilers Podcast Network RSS feed? And the reason was the audio file got corrupted, and I haven't gotten around to pulling the MP4 off of YouTube, bringing it in, cutting it up and chopping it up, and then re-releasing it. So if you want to go and listen to the Finally Friday episode where I talk about fan films and participatory culture and how it relates to people who are not happy with what's going on in the comic book industry, so they're going out and making their own comic books to, put out their statement, or people who want to go out and make remake The Last Jedi, or remake fan films, or remake Star Trek episodes, or whatever it is. I'm 100% behind you going out and doing those kinds of things. I'm not always 100% behind the methods in which you do it.
Right.
And Justin Robert Young thinks that this whole remake The Last Jedi thing, because if you go over to their website, they actually have fill in an email and put in your virtual pledge of how much money you would pledge to make this happen. He thinks it's just a big email scam to get your email address and then sell it.
You know what? He may not be wrong.
He may not be wrong. But yeah, if you weren't aware that we have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Major Spoilers Video. I played some Shadowrun, the video game.
Yeah. Which Shadowrun video game?
The original, apparently, the Seattle one.
Mm-hmm.
Have you played that one?
So is this?
It's an RPG.
Is this Shadowrun Returns?
Yes, Shadowrun Returns. Yes.
Yes, I have played that.
Okay.
It is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm about 4 hours into it, and I've been streaming that also on our YouTube channel and also on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Major Spoilers.
It's twitchy.
Yep. You can go and use your Amazon affiliate and subscribe to our channel. Kick back some money to us if you're a listener. Also, we've got an Amazon link over at majorspoilers.com. If you're going out to buy some video games, there's some upcoming video games that look really cool. Also, you can support us on Patreon. Matthew, Rodrigo, tell us a little bit about what's going on over there at patreon.com/Major Spoilers.
Patreon. Oh my God, there's so much cool stuff at the Patreon. For Patreon members, you can actually go and hear behind the scenes podcasts and get behind the scenes material. So sometimes the stuff that Steven records when we don't know he's recording.
Oh, you always know, because I always say, hey, I'm recording.
Hey, I'm recording. Yeah, stop saying the F word. Because I don't know if you know this, but Ashley and I do say it a lot. You also do have access to exclusive podcast material over there. Our ongoing Flashback podcast, which is a fan podcast about the CW TV series The Flash. See, I listen to you, Steven, at the beginning of every show. And of course, our bonus tracks are over there, and a whole bunch of stuff about that thing that Rodrigo does that gives him the headaches. What's that called? The critical something or something.
Oh, yeah. You want character sheets? Those are over there. All that kind of stuff. Here's the thing. We do have costs at Major Spoilers. We do have a couple of new firewalls that we have to put in because our old ones are old. They're no longer supported.
They're going out.
Yeah, no, not that they're going out, but they're like literally not supported. Yeah. And so they're
not firewalls anymore. They're just flickering.
Yes, they're just little big boxes sitting there. So you have to do that. So that
Amber lentils.
Amber lentils, yes.
I think Amber Lentil, wasn't she in that movie?
No.
She was married to Johnny Depp. That's who it is.
Amber Lentil is wrestling on Raw right now.
I like to kick a few bucks back to people like Rodrigo and Matthew and all of our creators at Major Spoilers. And if you enjoy these shows and want to see them continue, and you enjoy our website and all the reviews that we have over there, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. I would really appreciate it. We hit a goal in the last week, guys. We hit the critical hit 1 week early. So everyone who now is a $5 and up patron, you get to hear next week's episode of Critical Hit before everyone else, and it's commercial free.
Nice.
And as of today,
so now we have like two sets of future people.
Yes and no. You have the people that are listening today, and then you have the people who are listening to next week's episode before everyone else. So they get that little smugness. They get to wear that little badge on their shirt that says, "I know what's coming up next."
We heard this episode last week.
Yes, exactly. Also, it's commercial free. So that may be a bonus to many of you. And as of this recording today, we are less than $100. We're only $80 away from making the Legion Clubhouse a regular ongoing show. And I'm hoping with listener support, you out there who's listening right now, that you, if you are not already a patron, that you may want to kick in $5 or $10 a month. I mean, that's with all the shows that we produce, it's like $1 an episode at $10 a month. That we could hit that $80 very quickly and make the Legion Clubhouse an ongoing show. And then we have some other things coming up, including more bonus tracks, maybe something having to do with Batman the Animated Series. Maybe. You can find out more and you can sign up at patreon.com/major spoilers. Thank you so much for your support on that. All right. I think I've talked about this before. I think I know why I don't like the X-Men.
You don't like the X-Men?
Why for so long I didn't like the X-Men and had no interest in reading the X-Men. This was something that I think I had locked away in the back of my brain for decades. When I was in 6th grade, I think I've talked about this before. When I was in 6th grade, we had a bully in my school that enjoyed picking the heck out of me, picking on me all the time. Not like shoving your books out of your hands, but like slamming you up against the wall, lifting you off the ground. He was held back a year, so that may be part of it. But one thing that he liked was he thought Sabretooth and Wolverine were awesome.
And it was actually Wolvertooth and Saberine.
At one point, I have this flashback. I don't know how it started, but this actually happened. I was out in the hallway between class, and he was like, look at this. I don't remember how it led up to this, but the next thing I remember is he slams my head into the wall, and he's shoving this Wolverine comic in my face and go, read this comic book. It's so all you gotta read it. And it terrified me, a 6th grader, right? And I have a feeling that is why I have never been into Wolverine or the X-Men as much as other comics because of that, because of bullying. That may be somebody who's taken their fandom maybe a little bit too far.
Somebody aggressively shoving a Wolverine comic book in your face is a very apt metaphor for right? Wolverine comics, I feel.
And I can't remember, it was one of two covers, and Matthew tweeted this past weekend, I think it was, a fake Wolverine cover where it was like Wine Lover instead of Wolverine, and he's jumping towards...
towards a glass of wine. Wine Lover.
Either that cover or one of the ones that has Sabretooth and Wolverine going at each other's faces. So this would have been like 6th grade. That would have been like 19, I don't know, however old you are in 6th grade. 12?
Well,
so
we were in 6th grade in 1982 or 83.
82, 83. So yeah, it's one of those times. I've tried to track down the comic, and I think I've got it tracked down, which the only reason why I think I was in 6th grade, because the school that I grew up in was basically a T school, where the long part of the T was where 1st through 5th grade was, and then the short part of the T is where the 6th through 8th grade classes were. And the only reason why I think it was in 6th grade was because it was near the 6th grade classroom, but it could also have been something else because we could have been using those doors to go out to the recess in the back of the school. And that's also right there by that door.
The Wolverine leaping at the cover is Wolverine #2 from October of 82.
That may have been it.
So, yeah, the one where he's like leaping towards you with his claws out.
And I remember it was cold at that time. But I also remember that the cinder block walls hurt my face.
That's a strange memory, dude.
Well, no, I mean, is it?
No, I mean, that's fair.
It is.
Definitely. So, definitely of your introduction, I mean, it is just like very... very sort of metaphorical for, experiencing a piece of work, know, where it's like, if your first introduction to something are its terrible fans, and by that I don't mean that all of a particular thing's fans are terrible.
No.
It's just the bad fans. Yeah, it's like, I had never watched an episode of Rick and Morty, and after that whole Szechuan sauce fiasco, I kind of don't want to.
Yeah.
So I probably will eventually, because it's media and it's out there, but it's like it very rapidly fell to the bottom of my queue.
Yeah.
I've seen Pickle Rick, and I've seen The Return of the Vindicators, which, now this is the thing. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm a fan of some superheroes.
Sure.
So Rick and Morty gives us a superhero team and immediately starts deconstructing how stupid everything about superheroes is and literally murders them all on screen throughout the episode. And I'm just like, wow.
Is that the one where they're like, oh, I'm Rick's favorite. I'm Rick's favorite. And then you get to the end of the quest and it's like the dumb one that's back mopping poop off the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the episode that I think is actually literally called F you, Matthew. We mean you specifically.
Well, in
Matthew
20 years, when you're sitting around with your friends and you're having a sudden flashback to a traumatic event, maybe you'll be talking about this Rick and Morty episode.
I had one today, actually.
Did you really?
Yeah. Today at lunch, I had some meatloaf and did a 10 things, as I often do.
Yeah.
Not the meatloaf, the 10 things. And Carl Yoyology on the interwebs challenged me to do 10 superheroes I knew about before my first comic.
Oh, yeah. So this was like Letterman. Was this the Letterman one?
Yeah, but I had Letterman, and I had the TV Hulk, and I had the Super Friends and the Battle of the Planets, which is how that argument started.
Yeah. Going back around.
But
bring it all around.
It also had my very first superhero experience. I could not have been more than 4.
Yeah.
And my cousin had Amigo Robin.
Oh, yeah. With the oven mitts.
Yeah, the oven mitts and the rubber shoes. And my very first experience with superheroes was traumatic because I don't know if he's listening, but my Uncle Jerry, I know you're a nice guy now. You're a professional Santa Claus, but in the 70s, you were a giant douche.
He's a real Santa Claus.
Yeah, the real Santa Claus. Sorry. But he's one of the helpers. But this is the thing. I had taken the rubber shoes from Robin and put them on Spider-Man. And we might have accidentally sunk Robin to the bottom of a drainage ditch puddle. And he came out and was very, very, very angry. And, when I was a kid, I didn't understand why. Now that I'm a grown-up, I'm like, he probably spent the equivalent of $12.50 on that Robin doll. And we kind of wrecked it and sunk it to the bottom of the thing.
Person.
But it was traumatic to think back to that. And, I know that he's 5'4". And I know that now,
doll or your Uncle Fred?
Oh, my Uncle Fred. But now I'm like, in retrospect, in hindsight, it all makes perfect sense. But when you're a kid, that's all very confusing. You don't make the connection between that. And he seemed, even 5'4", he seemed like an enormous, scary adult hollering.
Mm-hmm.
So I still remember being terrified as a tiny, tiny baby child.
I'm curious, what was your first introduction to Spider-Man? Was it comics? Was it
Nicholas
Electric
Hammond.
Company?
Nicholas Hammond.
Uh-huh.
CBS did 13 episodes, 1978, 79.
That was before
I saw
or after the Hulk?
That was the same time. The Hulk, I think, was on 78 to 82.
Mm-hmm.
Would have been about the same time that Wonder Woman was on ABC.
Yeah.
But I saw that before I ever saw Electric Company. And we had a really heated argument about it because if you remember in Electric Company, he fired literal ropes out of a wristband, and that was his thing.
Yeah.
And on TV, Nicholas Hammond didn't do the 2 fingers down, fingers out, thwippy. So I had one cousin who only read the comics and one cousin who had only seen the Electric Company, and then I had only seen the CBS TV show. And we had this ongoing argument about how you do web shooters and how web shooters work, because each of us had seen the character in different media in different places with different web shooters and different applications there too.
When I was in first grade, they made us watch the Electric Company.
Nobody knows where you are.
And I'm trying to think, there was another show right after the Electric Company, or at the same time as, or they were back to back. It wasn't Sesame Street.
Mm-hmm.
But we also were required to watch that.
Was it the Letter People?
Yeah, Letter People. That's what it was.
Come and be the Letter People. I hated that.
And so that would have been 76, 77?
75?
Somewhere around there. So I would have seen Electric Company Spider-Man before TV series Spider-Man, but I know that I had seen comic books with Spider-Man in them in between that time period.
Right.
What about you, Rodrigo?
My first introduction to Spider-Man was probably the old Spider-Man cartoon.
Oh, yeah. That would be the 80s, the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, or are you talking about the 60s Spider-Man cartoon?
No, the 60s Spider-Man, because things stay in circulation in Mexico a lot longer.
Yeah.
Here's the deal with that, though. The Spider-Man cartoon's theme was translated into Spanish, and it does not sound anything like the English one. So, I had lived in the United States for probably a few years before I ever heard anybody be like Spider-Man, boop doop, and I was like, I don't get that rep. I don't know what that's about, and I had to like seek out the English theme for Spider-Man. And I'm like, this is so much better. Why would they even change that? It's like, but definitely when things get translated, there's kind of these like eras.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes they're like, everything needs to be translated, and you can't have a guy named like Steve. His name has to be Pablo. And then there are times when they leave almost everything intact. Right. So they're like, hola, Steve.
With Batman, where everything's the same, but his name is Bruno.
I mean, just to give you an example, all of the like major Disney characters have different Spanish names.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
What?
Yes. So Mickey is Miguelito, which makes sense, right? It's like a big assumption that Mickey is short for Michael.
Yeah.
Donald is Pascual. Because it alliterates, right? Pato Pascual. Goofy is Tribilín, which I have no idea where they got that. And then like Minnie is like Mimi, and Daisy's Daisy. Like Daisy actually made it through with her name intact. And technically Clarabelle and Horace just have like Spanish versions of those names.
Right.
But yeah,
God,
it's like they actually went through. Huh?
What year was that? Holy
moly. 1927.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. He's one of the originals.
Yeah, where everybody bounced up and down because it was a cartoon and they had to show off how much motion they could do.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
He's one of the originals. Let's see.
Bishop. Nightcrawler.
Luke Cage. You seen the new season of the Luke Cage there, Rodrigo?
No. Defenders really got me to a point where I was like, I really don't have to watch these anymore. Like, this was so bad, and Iron Fist was so bad, and Defenders did almost nothing to remedy that, and in fact kind of just tanked it further. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to see. I haven't seen the new Jessica Jones either.
It doesn't.
The latest season.
Oh, you're talking about last season. The
second season. The second season of Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen Luke Cage, and I kind of don't want to. Like, I'm just kind of done with Netflix Marvel.
I watched the first episode. I guess I spent the time trying to figure out, okay, where do you want this to go? And maybe I need to watch a few more episodes to see how it comes together. But I remember, like, season 1 of all these shows, I would sit down and watch 2 or 3 episodes in a row and be up until like 2:00 in the morning to watch those. I watched the first episode and I was like, oh man, this is an hour? Ugh. And then I got through it and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to bed. So I don't know if it gets better, and I hope it does. I'll try to watch all of it. But I thought I saw somebody say that Iron Fist, there's actually a really good portrayal of Iron Fist in this Luke Cage series. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm interested to see if that quick internet glance that I saw today is true or not. So I think we talked Incredibles 2 already. I know you haven't seen Luke Cage 2, Matthew.
No, I haven't. I want to.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Because I think Matthew and I recorded for like a long time.
Weeks.
This is just a ramble show. Some people had made some suggestions. I said we try to talk about those. but this is just our general topics show for the month. No intro, no outro. I mean, how is that? The boy turned 11. The little voice that you hear at the end of all of our shows turned 11 this last week. First day of summer.
Did I tell you of the horror
of my boy turning 11? I mean, he's a little bit more surly, but I mean, yeah, I know that's a horror, but.
You know, my baby is 14, right?
Yeah.
I've taken her driving.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. How did that go?
Pretty well. She was a little
automatic,
keyed up
right?
The first time. No.
Oh, stick shift?
No. I'm not stupid.
So wait, which one? Take her driving? If you didn't
it was an automatic.
Oh, okay, because I said automatic.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Oh, okay.
But yes, it is an automatic. I thought my brain sometimes confuses automatic with manual because I'm stupid.
Right. Okay.
But yes, it is an automatic. She went around the high school parking lot.
Yeah.
We did some backing up, some parking. We haven't gone out on a street and done like, a long
Is she in high school
kind of drive.
Yet?
She will be. Okay. She starts high school in the fall.
Okay. So is she going to take driver's ed during the school year, or are you going to make her wait till the summer?
I don't know. I'm not sure how it all breaks down. She can take the test this summer, so we may be taking the actual written portion of the test.
Mm-hmm.
And then do some more driving practice. I'm not exactly sure how it all breaks down.
How was it when you were a kid? When I was a kid, you had two options. You could take it during the summer and get it done before the school year started and get your permit and all that stuff. And then you could drive to school. And of course, in my small town, driving was like a status symbol. Or you could be with all the losers and take it during the school year, which didn't cost you anything extra. It was just a class you took. Guess which one I ended up in?
The losers one.
The losers group, right. But here's the thing. I think instead of cramming all of driver's ed into a couple of months over the summer and spreading it out over an entire school year was actually better for me because we got to drive on all the different road conditions. Dry, hot, wet, snow.
Sure.
And so I think it was actually better for me. What about you, Matthew? Did you do it during the summer or during the school year? Or did you?
We only had the option to do it in the summer.
Ah, okay.
So the art teacher would teach you how to drive in the summer. And I went with one of my idiot friends. And the first day, we were like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, you're doing pretty good. Go out on the highway. So the first time I ever actually officially drove a vehicle, he had me drive 15 minutes at highway speed to the next town.
Oh, yeah.
Which, granted, in central Kansas, it was like 15 miles. But then stop and then turn around and come back just to see if I could hold speed. Because, by that point, I had been mowing lawns for 3 or 4 years. So the idea of accelerating and steering a vehicle was perfectly fine. It wasn't something I needed any practice with. I mean, not the same thing, but very similar. So you just had to get used to going more than 20 miles an hour.
Yeah. Rodrigo, when did you learn driving?
Last week.
Yeah, I put off learning to drive for as long as possible because I didn't particularly want to drive. And I kind of didn't care. And I was like, I can just take the bus to school. It's not a big deal. But I have a younger brother and sister. And so my parents were like, you are going to drive so that you can drive them to the things that they need to do.
Yeah.
Because you kids are in too many activities. And there's only 2 of us. So you're learning how to drive. So I was kind of forced to learn how to drive. And I was like, probably like 17 and a half, like the like oldest that I could have possibly been to still have done this in high school. And the school didn't offer it, so I had to get like private
instruction,
private lessons.
Now, was this when you were in Ohio at this point, right?
I was living in Ohio. And the instruction was twofold. I had, on the one hand, my driving instructors, all of which were nuts. I recall specifically one young lady who would have me drive around. And so she would have me get in the car and we would drive to a parking lot where I was going to be driving around. And one time a squirrel ran in front of us and she sped up to hit it.
Oh, no.
What?
And I was like, what just happened? And she's like, well, there's lots of them.
Oh, no. I never understood people that do that stuff. I mean, in high school, that was the same way. It's like a lot of kids would like, hey, let's speed up, let's swerve to hit this possum or raccoon or squirrel. Or whatever.
No, it's terrible. And then there was another guy who this was right when the first X-Men movie was coming out. The Fox X-Men movie, and
that bullet
he was like,
head into the
smash your head against the wall.
Watch this movie.
Watch it, movie.
Nope, it was actually the opposite. I would say this guy was a little too chill because we were driving, and he was like, "Hey, man, are you gonna go see that new X-Men movie?" And I was like, "Yeah, it looks pretty good." And he's like, "Yeah, TNA," except he didn't say TNA. He said the actual thing. And I was like,
tambourines and alligators?
Is that just a way of saying cool? And I think it was, because, I mean, there's some attractive ladies in that movie, but they're not like particularly uncovered in it. So I'm like, I guess that just means rad or whatever. And then the other half, but you guys didn't think you were going to get such an in-depth history here.
No, this is great.
The other side of that was the classroom learning on how to drive.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy was mega nuts. He would sit us down, and he kept, and it's like a bunch of teenagers, like a bunch of high school kids. And he would assure us that he could blacklist us if we didn't pay attention. That he could just like write something somewhere and they say this person can never get a license. And like he would hold us afterwards. Like he'd be like, no, you guys can't leave because you were too noisy or whatever. And we had assigned seats, and there were like 3 jerks from Hilliard Derby right next to me where I sat. And they were always super loud, and my whole table always had to stay after. And then one day I'm like, wait a minute, this is not a real teacher. I can actually leave. So I just kind of left, and nothing ever happened. He had been in an accident, and so he couldn't feel his index finger on, I want to say, his right hand.
Yeah.
So he would just like slam it against the table. He'd be like, look, I don't feel anything. Slam, 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 slam. And I'm like, yeah, but there's still like tissue there. And then also the other thing is that he would tell us that deer are much more dangerous than sharks, which is true. So that's kind of all I got out of that class was that.
Because, jeez, imagine how ridiculous Get Out would have been if it was a shark instead of a deer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just it's interesting. Is your daughter interested in driving, or is she kind of like, whatever?
One of her friends got her permit already, and so she's like, I want to learn to drive. But the problem is, and I don't know if you know this, but my car hasn't gone anywhere since December. And one of these days I'm going to do something about it. And my wife's car doesn't always have a speedometer that works. There's a short in the dashboard. So about half the time, the speedometer just goes clink, 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 and doesn't actually measure your speed. So we have to do this with a car that doesn't belong to me. So I'm like super nervous about how this is, this is Sarah's car. This is not a car that belongs to me, you guys. And I'm trying to teach the child how to drive in a vehicle that does not belong to me. But, she can't drive my car, and she won't drive mom's car because rightfully so, she won't know how fast she's going.
My daughter is an honor student at such and such elementary school. Yeah, that's why she doesn't want to drive it.
Well, and also it's it's a scary vehicle.
I mean, I just noticed that there's a trend of kids who don't care about getting their driver's license. I mean, for me, in my age, and maybe you too, Matthew, because you were in a small town, this was not only the status symbol, but also your get out of town free card. This was like you could drive 10 miles to Ottawa, or you could drive to Lawrence or Topeka or Kansas City if your parents didn't really care that much.
Exactly.
And
or in my case, I could drive to work, because I delivered newspapers. Yeah. If I rode my bike, it was a 3-hour route. If I drove the truck, it was an hour.
But it seems like today, with more public and easier access to transportation, Ubers, Lyft, etc., driving's not such a big deal anymore.
Uber's Lift, I think, is probably Steven Spielberg's best movie, but the black and white really bothered me because it was like, I understand, but geez.
I think we've covered everything. I think we've really talked a long time, listeners. I hope you found. I mean, this is the this is like
Schindler's List is the joke, Steve.
I know. If you want a shorter version of this show, then we do something every week. That is the
play it back
behind the 7%
scenes. Speed.
It's the behind the scenes episodes that we live. Or I'm sorry, the Major Spoilers pre-show that we release. Not every week, but most weeks. Just depends on how rushed we are. But it's usually all of us just sitting around 15, 20 minutes before we record the main show that you get to listen to. And it's a lot like this. But you can get that if you're a patron over at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. And again, if you are a patron, I just want to thank you so much for everything that you have done to get Major Spoilers this far. We're growing slowly. I'm a slow and steady kind of person. I don't want to just, hey, we have to be at the top of the world and let's blow everything in 10 seconds kind of guy. But I appreciate everything that you've done to bring us this far. And if you're not a patron and you enjoy what we do, then please consider becoming a patron and making the cool things happen. This is actually the last episode of the Major Spoilers podcast before our, what is it? 13th birthday, 12th birthday, 13th birthday.
What year is it now?
It is 2018, so 2006. So we will be starting our 13th year.
13.
Next week, July 3rd. So while you're out there shooting off fireworks and those kind of things, we'll be having fireworks celebrations of our own as we eat the ice cream cakes and the blowing the little whistle things and the hilarious candles that don't go out when you blow them out.
Oh.
My mom thinks that those are the funniest things in the world. But somebody wrote in, Scott wrote in and said, hey, does Major Spoilers have an episode where the panelists chronicle how the Major Spoilers team formed? We've talked about this in years past. I know on some shows. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, it's scattered through bits and pieces. But I tell you what, next week I will release a special episode or something. Or maybe we'll talk about it on next week's Major Spoilers podcast.
There you go. Well, I think what happened is Professor Spoilers founded the school, and then Stephen was his first. And then, of course, after Stephen.
Yeah, I'll go through all of that.
I have big feet.
I've got it all chronicled and lined up in my head about how things play out, and you can hear some good things. So
Rodrigo's telekinetic.
Yeah, so I'll tell that next week. Also, we've got a bunch of other shows. Here's one of the other cool things about bringing it back around to gatekeeping. Let's bring in more fans. Let's do some cool things. Munchkin Land has been a fantastic show because Munchkin Land is a game where we sit around and play games. Rodrigo used to be on that show when we just played card games, and now we play a bunch of games. But at one point, we brought in young Zach. And young Zach was fine on that show and fun on that show because he brought in this very younger perspective, this like 20-year-old perspective. And he was on the Major Spoilers podcast, and he brought in his 21-year-old perspective. And then we spun out a Zach on Film podcast so he could bring in his 22-year-old perspective. But he was, I think, up until Ashley, one of the youngest people on the show.
That's true.
Until this week. So, Munchkin Land has a new player, has entered the arena. I think he's 14. He's Dr. Brad Will's son. And he's played 2 games with us already. We've recorded 2 episodes with him. And it's fun because we're getting a different perspective on humor, knowledge, all sorts of things. Like a lot of these Munchkin Land things that are going on in the cards, they're funny to us. Like Brian and Dr. Brad and I will all be laughing at this because we know these things. And he's sitting there goes, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to spoil for a couple of weeks from now. But there's something in there, and I'm making an A-Team reference because I mentioned a Baracus, and I was like, oh, is the first initials BA? And everybody kind of chuckles, and he's just sitting there going, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. And then I'm like, no, seriously, you don't know what the A-Team is? And he's like, no, I don't. So it's like totally cool to get different perspectives on things. That's why I like having...
Oh, sure.
That's why I loved having Zach on because he brought that young perspective. That's why I love having Ashley on the show because she brings a younger person's perspective. This is a 14-year-old perspective. 14, 15. So that is going to be really interesting as that show goes forward. And looking ahead to 2019, I'm starting to plan all of the shows that we're going to, or all the trade paperbacks that we're planning for 2019. One of them might just bring on a certain voice that you hear at the end of every episode that we record, because he is a huge My Hero Academia fan.
Oh.
And I want to bring him in to talk about My Hero Academia. We got him here's the thing. The kid for months has been talking about Labo. Ever since it came out, I want the Labo. Labo for my Switch. I'm like, okay, maybe for your birthday. And so I got him that. But also at the same time, Volume 13 of My Hero Academia came out. So on his birthday, he's opening up the package. He's like, oh, look at this Labo. This is really cool. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. And then he opens up his next one. He's like, My Hero Academia, Volume 13. I haven't read this one yet. And I was like, well, yeah, that's why it's your gift, dummy. I didn't call him dummy. But instead of tearing into Labo, the first thing he does is he literally, after we did candles and cake, he got up from the table. He took the My Hero Academia. He sat down on the couch and blew through that entire volume in an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. He didn't care for anything else. It was just like locked in on that. So I think he's going to be on the show maybe next year to bring his perspective on My Hero Academia. In the meantime, if you have any questions, thoughts, comments, reactions, etc., dear listener, drop them at podcast@majorspoilers.com. It's an email, podcast@majorspoilers.com. And we'll talk about them, and we'll answer Scott's question about how did Major Spoilers form, all that kind of stuff next week, because it will be the birthday week. And thank you, Rodrigo, for hanging out for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Thank you. Matthew and I have been recording since 7:30 tonight.
Yeah.
And then we just kept rolling. So you're getting an extra long general chat thing.
We didn't even get to ask why Jillian Jacobs looks so much like Margot Robbie.
Because they're the same person.
I don't think they are, though.
Go back and listen to the Battle of the Planets and the Justice League theme, Super Friends theme song. And that will answer your question, Matthew.
Okay.
Until then, you can find Matthew at Mighty King Cobra. You can find Rodrigo at Fearsome Critter. You can find me at Major Spoilers. And you can find all the fun, all of the excitement at majorspoilers.com. We'll be back next week because we know that you love comics and we do too. And we'll talk with you soon.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save some bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the rack. And although every other page would be backwards, I suppose, I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, he'd make me wait out on the corner. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Oh, wait, I think I found a better way. If I was Hulk in green or gray, I could bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little me would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would you bag and board your comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, 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 yeah. What a major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2018 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.